Gentili signore e signori, buongiorno. Dopo questo doveroso omaggio a Verona.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Just like Adriano De San, Italy's leading cycling commentator, is welcoming the Italian public to the 68th Giro d'Italia. My name is Jose Diaz from Italia Velo Sport, and I'd like to welcome you in the company of Brian Drever to the 68th Giro d'Italia. We're here to bring you the comments on what is the second biggest and most important stage race in the world. Hello, Brian.
How you doing, Jose? And I think one of the significant things about the Giro d'Italia in terms of American fans is going to be that this, I believe, is the race where American professional riders really made their mark for the very first time on the international cycling scene.
By the way, Brian, this is a very unique bicycle. As you can see, this was a Bataillon bicycle that Vicentini attempted to use at the prologue time trial. However, he was not allowed to use it at the start. The bicycle has a monocoque construction in the frame, and it was some frame regulations as to pertains to what is allowed and what isn't that inhibited the use of it. Since then, they've made some modifications to it, and at the Trofeo Baracchi, I think that one of the Italian riders used one, and very successful, I might add.
So Vicentini is now climbing on a more normal funny bike, as we might say, and with the upturned bars, the disc wheels, and so on. Even this bicycle, while it's widely accepted now, would not have been allowed as little as 2 years ago.
Well, as you know, what actually counts is that you cannot add anything to the bicycle that in so doing would make the bicycle more aerodynamic. So you cannot put covers on the wheels. However, you can put a wheel that the entirety of the wheel is a single unit, and that's why disc wheels are allowed. Here we see the man that made disc wheels famous, Francesco Moser, in his inimitable style of riding, and probably the best time trialist in the world right now, without exception.
He's a tremendous professional. I had the pleasure of seeing him compete in Toronto in 1984, where he went to compete in a circuit event up there, and was brought over. There's a tremendous Italian, in fact, probably the largest Italian population outside of Italy is in Toronto, Canada, and the Italian fans turned out in droves to see Francesco Moser in 1984, and he gave them their money's worth, even though none of them paid to see him. Of course, many bicycle races, most bicycle races here in this country, there's no admission. He was attacking consistently in the race. He was in every breakaway. He was just put on a tremendous performance here in the United States in his only appearance in North America.
Well, I have the privilege of knowing him personally, and he stayed at my house for a couple of weeks because in 1982 we brought him to one of our winter clinics. And when you say he's a professional, he is a professional in the full sense of the word. I think that this man could probably write the book on how to be a professional. Here we see him finishing, and I believe he's going to keep that pink jersey, which is a leader's jersey. The reason why he started with it is because, as we all know, he won the 67th Giro d'Italia last year. And here we see that he did win it. His time was 45:06 for 6.6 kilometers. That was the length of the prologue.
And here he's going to make the people in the crowd pay the price of being close to greatness, with the victory champagne being sprayed and the pink jersey, the first of his Maglia Rosa jerseys for 1985, the 68th Giro d'Italia for Francesco Moser, winning the prologue time trial.
I'd like to interject at this point. I don't know how many people are aware of the significance of the pink jersey. And that's the reason that it's pink is because the newspaper that sponsors, the main sponsor, I should say, of the Giro, is called La Gazzetta dello Sport, and the papers, the page upon which is printed is pink. So, and it's exactly the same reason for which the yellow jersey is what's used in the Tour, because the newspaper that sponsors the Tour, the colors of the pages are actually yellow. Here we have the actual first road stage, which is Stage 1, the prologue is basically done just to determine a wearer of the leader's jersey. But here we have stage 1, and we're looking at a small breakaway. The last rider there, by the way, his name is Luciano Loro. He rides for the Del Tongo Colnago. He lives very close to where we have our training camps in the summertime in Italy. And he does come out quite frequently and ride with some of the riders, some of the best riders that attend the Italia Velosport training camps.
We saw Greg LeMond, the American, riding in his La Vie Claire colors, also in that what was a 4-man break, and has now been joined by 4 more riders and totals 8 in this first stage of the 68th Giro d'Italia.
Well, Greg is riding the Giro for the first time this year. He rode it for the first time this year. And La Vie Claire had one of the strongest, if not the strongest team there. They really left their mark on the Giro, no question about it.
Now, competing in the Giro d'Italia for the first time is an all-American trade team, and that is the 7-Eleven team, or what we know as the 7-Eleven team here in the United States, with such familiar faces as Ron Kiefel and Davis Finney. Forming the nucleus of that team. They are co-sponsored while they were in the Giro d'Italia by a vacuum cleaner manufacturer called Hoonvid. So if you see close-ups of some of the 7-Eleven jerseys and you see a word on there you're not familiar with, it is Hoonvid, which is a vacuum cleaner manufacturer that co-sponsored the American 7-Eleven team in the Giro d'Italia. And they, as I said at the outset of this videotape, distinguished themselves, I think, a real turning point in cycling, because it is not an individual rider, which we have had great individual performances in the past from Greg LeMond, from other Americans who have distinguished themselves, Jacques Boyer, George Mount, but we have a whole team of American riders competing in the Giro d'Italia, a major European stage race for the very first time, and they showed very well for themselves.
Well, here we have what it actually, you will see, grows to be a typical image of a Giro finish, and that's on the flat stages. What we have is some of the best sprinting that you'll ever see. Fortunately, there's going to be plenty of these, so if there's any sprinters out there who are watching this thing, I recommend that you watch real close, because you can get a lesson in sprinting from the way these guys are going to go for the finish line. You're going to see some of the biggest field sprints you'll ever see. You're going to see definitely some of the fastest field sprints you'll ever see.
And it's not for the faint of heart either, as this field of riders is well over 150 riders. You can see what a tremendous group it is, and we're talking about 150 top European professional riders, very closely matched in ability. We're talking about large teams of riders that will be doing what they can to set their best man up for the sprint, and this is a wild and hairy affair as this many guys comes to the finish line all in a group. Here's the first of what will be many tremendous field sprints in the Giro d'Italia.
And here we go, one of several wins by Urs Freuler. As we know, Freuler has already this year not only won several stages of the Giro, which you will see later on, but he also won the Keirin at the World Professional Championships, as well as a points race. Without a doubt, one of the top sprinters in the world right now.
Urs Freuler, very, very fine sprint, and that was 8, 10, 12 riders abreast on the road. Now here we are coming up on the second stage, which is team time trial, and the entire team of riders, the trade team, will compete together, and the way that this is used in the results for the overall prize in the Giro d'Italia, for the overall results, is that each rider will get the time of the team added to his individual general classification, and if any rider is off the back of the team time trial, he will receive his own individual time. Here is the Del Tongo Colnago team, led, of course, by Giuseppe Cerrone, a former winner of the Giro d'Italia.
Actually, Cerrone has won it twice, Brian. And here we have a very well-known sponsor to us, Coca-Cola. Even though here in the United States they haven't been doing much cycling sponsorship, as you can see in Europe, they've taken cycling in a very serious way.
So off goes the Del Tongo Colnago squad. and they will quickly form into a pace line. They will work together just as if they were in a breakaway. They will be trying to post as good a time as they possibly can. And what it means for the team is, of course, in the team classification, it's very obvious how this would count in team classification. And for individual classification, if they are looking to put their team leader in contention in the individual classification, as much time as they can gain on their rivals' team captain in this team time trial will count very, very, very strongly. This is very popular not only for the teams, but for the fans and for the spectators who are able to watch them compete as a unit, and they are very significant in terms of the overall results. The team time trials that we see in the Giro d'Italia, the Tour de France, and many of the international stage races.
Now, the speed that they sustain in these events is utterly incredible. Actually, this team time trial is going to have winning average speed of approximately 33, 34 miles an hour. It is not a short event. This one in particular, I believe, was a distance of about 50, 60 kilometers. So it's not something that it's a tiny little event like the prologue, which we were talking about 6 kilometers, 650 meters. Here we're talking about a fairly lengthy event, and we're going to see some very, very, very fast speeds.
You can see the pace line, or more or less a mini echelon that the riders have formed here, and they'll go through the corner in formation. Here is yet another team, and this is Moser's team, and you can see him wearing number 1 and also wearing the pink jersey that he has earned by virtue of victory in the prologue time trial, and holds through the finish of stage 1, which was a bunch sprint, and his entire team here now, Moser riding right in the middle of that bunch.
Now, the teams really don't practice this kind of event very much, but these guys being professionals and all of them riding well over 100 races every year and training thousands and thousands of miles, whereas whether in group or individually, their bike handling technique and their sense of a pace line and their sense of sitting on a wheel is so magnificent that it's almost second nature for them to ride this in almost perfect harmony.
There's Moser at the tail end, having just taken his turn at the front. You'll see each rider in turn will slip off to the side, the downwind side of the pace line. If there's any crosswind whatsoever, if they have to choose between going left or right, they'll choose the downwind side to move to the rear, and the side that is in the wind will be the forward or advancing side of this little mini echelon here. Here we get a shot of one of the camera bikes, the cameramen taking pictures of each other there apparently, and Moser's squad going down the road.
Now here we have the arrival of the Del Tongo team, and the actual race terminated inside a track in Milano. This is, by the way, this is the famed Vigorelli in Milano.
The Vigorelli Velodrome providing the finish for this team time trial. A number of the stages in stage races do finish on the velodromes of Europe. They'll bring them in. They'll permits them to gather a gate to have spectators pay to sit in the grandstand, and they'll have what amounts to an exhibition finish inside of a velodrome, and that's what we're seeing here. The Del Tongo squad finishing there. There we see their time and the running time of the team currently on the track, and it's slower.
So at this point we actually have the Del Tongo team ahead.
Good aerial shot of the velodrome and a large crowd on hand.
That's Moser's team.
Finishing second.
Finishing second, correct.
And having lost 11 seconds as a unit to the members of the Del Tongo squad that has already finished.
Which actually, by so doing, it actually gives the pink jersey to Cerrone.
So each individual on Cerrone's team will have lost 11 seconds to each individual on the Del Tongo squad. So in terms of individual general classification, you'll see that you would see that all of the team members of a particular team will be awarded the team time. There we see Cerrone being interviewed with the new pink jersey that he has just earned, or that his team has just earned for him.
Cerrone, by the way, is the second most popular rider in Italy, second only to Moser. And he's just explaining how important it was for them to win this, because in so doing, without an incredible effort, they could actually pick up the pink jersey, which is quite valuable, not only in terms of personal gratification, but in terms of publicity, and that's exactly what the sponsors are paying for.
A little trivia for fans that don't know that when Gibby Hatton became the first American rider to win an international world championship in the modern era, so to speak, back in 1974, as a junior, the rider that he defeated for that Junior World Sprint Championship was Giuseppe Cerrone. And here they are a dozen years later. Cerrone is an international hero and revered in his own country. Gibby Hatton similarly famous here in the United States, and both still competing, although Hatton is a track specialist and Cerrone has made the transition to the road.
So this is stage number 3. It's 190 kilometers, and it goes from the city of Milano to Pinzolo. We actually have a stage here that is not flat. At the beginning of it is rather flat, but towards the end we have 2 mountain premes, and it actually finishes at a slight uphill, not a great uphill, but a slight uphill.
There we see one of the red, white, and green jerseys of the American 7-Eleven team, and it's Andy Hampsten wearing the number 64. There's the Hoonved on the side, and this is Andy Hampsten, who rides in the United States for Raleigh, is competing on the 7-Eleven trade team, the Giro d'Italia, and he is on a solo breakaway at this point in this 3rd stage. It's kind of a prediction of things to come. The American riders doing quite well. Hampsten, in fact, earning a stage victory in the Giro d'Italia, a real landmark for American racing cyclists, American racing pros.
They certainly gained the respect of the European riders and the European press. At first, in the first few stages, they were accused of some somewhat dangerous sprinting, etc. But later on, with the results and with their seriousness and dedication, they actually gained an incredible amount of respect, at least from the Italian cycling world and the Italian press.
Hampsten followed his successes in the Giro d'Italia with a very fine runner-up. He was runner-up in the Coors Classic in the United States to Greg LeMond. LeMond winning first place, Andy Hampsten really giving LeMond the only challenge that he received during the entire national tour of America. Here they are racing against each other in Europe.
Now here we have one of those crashes which unfortunately occur every so often. In Italy in particular, they've claimed that some of these crashes have been attributed to the helicopter. The riders have protested vehemently about the helicopter sometimes getting too close, and with the turbulence, the air turbulence created by the rotor blades, creating a little bit of havoc in the group. And if, as you all know, if it doesn't take much, just hit wheels, and before you know it, 20, 30 guys can go down if you have a big enough group.
It's amazing that there aren't worse situations that are caused by the tremendous rolling caravan that takes place in one of these large stage races. There in the foreground is Ron Kiefel making repairs to his equipment, and a fallen rider there in the middle of the street is being attended to by one of the motorcycle drivers. There are so many vehicles in these races that it's really a tribute to the skill of the drivers, of the cyclists, and of everyone concerned that more serious accidents do not happen. Somebody is in definite serious chase mode here, Jose, because that single file shot there tells us that that up front is a very, very definite effort being made. Here's Hampsten just now being caught.
Well, earlier we looked at, I think that Cerrone had put pretty much his team up front. There was a shot earlier where you had most of the Del Tongo, all the yellow jerseys from the Del Tongo out front. And he had to do that because he can't, at this point in time, with only a 10-second lead, he had to do that. You have to get your team out there to work for you.
Here we see evidence of the handiwork of Italian fans in the street again as they paint up the names of some of their favorite riders or whatever and onto the street. And as large as those letters were, they had to be gearing that towards the helicopter shots or somebody quite far away.
Here we have Baron Kelly, which is one of Italy's well-known and famous riders. And here is a young man that on his first year as a pro, he ended up getting second place at the Giro, which shot him to instant stardom. And unfortunately, he's been one of these riders that everybody has expected since then, has expected so much of him, and he has not been able to deliver. You know, he's won many races, but everybody was expecting the next Coppi. It seems like whenever any rider comes along that has any skill or any promising characteristics, the Italian press and the Italian public is looking at the next Coppi. And, you know, Coppi, like Merckx, there's only one of them, you know. I think that in Belgium, they suffer from the same malady. Every time a new rider comes along that shows any promise, they immediately say, well, here's another Merckx, you know. I think that's happened with Van der Aert, and it happened with the Wolf, yeah. And, there's Merckx, there's only one, Coppi, there's only one, and it's pretty hard for a rider to then carry that on his shoulders.
I suppose here in the United States, fans would be looking for the next Greg LeMond, and the current Greg LeMond is only 24 years old and just at the threshold of a great career. And he's really made a mark in international cycling already, made his mark here in the United States a long time ago as a junior, and has raced virtually his entire career since graduating from the junior ranks as a European professional. The expectations that people had of him have been realized in every way.
Yeah, but some of these riders, the pressure is too much. Here they're setting up for the sprint, and as you can see, at this point they're going probably around 35, 36 miles an hour. And from that speed, then they're going to progress up to actually a full sprint. That's typical of the Italian Giro semi-flat stages, where you have very slow start, and then at the end you have incredible speeds. Like the last hour is usually somewhere between 50 and 60 kilometers an hour.
Here a rider has made a very definite commitment, and there we see that familiar blue jersey of Frühler, and a crash as one of the riders, for whatever reason, was forced into or went into the feet of those little barricades. And sprinting up front here we have Cerrone, not content to sit on that pink jersey, is going to take a stage win to boot. And there he is. He's going to stand on the awards platform, not only as the wearer of the pink jersey, but as the stage winner. Here is a replay now of the crash, and as you can see, one of the riders on the far left of the screen, the far right of the road, took a wide line there and was put into the barricades, either through his own efforts or having been forced over there by one of the other riders.
Well, he flew. I mean, no question about it. That guy just was going at the speed in which he was going. I mean, it's amazing that he's alive, to be honest with you.
And now they're dragging just at the top of the screen. You could see the.
By the way, we see Davis Finney. I don't know if you noticed it, but he was right at the top of the screen there.
And getting one of the top 10 finishes. And there he is now, wearing the purple or maroon jersey of the points leader. Apparently his consistency in stage finishes at this point has earned him the right to wear that point leader jersey. We've seen him in a similar jersey in the Coors Classic in Colorado as the points leader, and here Davis Finney, certainly America's premier finisher, race finisher, is earning a similar honor in Europe.
Now we're going to the mountains, and this is stage 4. It's 237 kilometers, and it goes from Pinzolo to Selva di Val Gardena. Selva di Val Gardena is a ski resort, and actually this stage, not only is it quite long, but it finishes on the top of the climb. It has 2 mountain premes, and one of them, as a matter of fact, is the finish line, which is good for mountain classification points.
And here we have a pretty significant situation with one of the riders. His equipment has very definitely let him down at that point as he reaches for a shift. the bicycle does not respond, and this is a pretty sad situation for a rider on as steep a climb as he is in right now. The rest of the field just simply going past him as he is helpless to do anything.
And we're looking at Baron Kelly again, whom we were talking about earlier as one of those riders that was expected to be the next Coppi. He's a very good climber, which is surprisingly, because I know Baron Kelly personally, and he's about 6'1", 6'2", which is rather tall for somebody to be as good a climber. We have Vicentini there from the Carrera Inox Brand team, another good Italian climber. And Van der Velde is wearing that purple jersey. Here we have Hinault. And we see Moser following that small breakaway.
There's Lejarreta, and he is another outstanding climbing rider. And he's churning along there in the small chain ring, probably a 42.19. That gives you an idea of how steep a climb this really is, going up to Val Gardena, the ski resort. There's Hinault, tremendous all-around rider. His all-round abilities are what have carried him to five consecutive five Tour de France victories, not consecutive, but in anybody's lifetime, that is certainly an accomplishment. Only 3 riders in the world have done that.
There's no question that they're climbing here, Brian. It's and these are roads that are typical to Italy. That's one of the reasons why I think that you have such good riders over there, because you have so many roads that you ride on them and you say, my God, you know, somebody who was a rider actually was a guy who designed this road, because they're almost perfect roads for the purpose of riding a bicycle.
Large lumber mill on the right there. And here's Hinault leading a small group in pursuit of Lejarreta in the 4th stage of 1985 Giro d'Italia.
That area over there, by the way, it's in the Dolomites, and it's probably one of the most beautiful sections of Italy. Where at this point we're not too far from the area where all the skiing takes place. I think that we're near the border with Austria, and it's a beautiful, beautiful area, not just for skiing, but in the summertime is where a lot of Italians come for their holidays because of the altitude and the cool weather.
Appears to be a bit of moisture in the air, either low-hanging clouds or actual rain. And the roads are obviously wet, and occasionally you see drops on the camera lens. As Hinault there, the famous Bernard Hinault of the La Vie Claire team, climbing in between 2 other riders. The road is apparently flattened out a bit here as we see the riders now in the large chain ring and picking up speed.
Leading the group right now, we have Roberto Vicentini, and Vicentini is actually, as it's going to turn out, he's going to be wearing the pink jersey for quite a few stages. Then he came down with some intestinal flu and actually ended up not, I don't think he even finished the Giro. But he's a very, very strong Italian rider. Again, he's one of these riders that everybody's putting so much expectations on him, and he kind of tends to choke at the crucial point.
There you get an idea of just how much of a lead they have at this point. Certainly enough to destroy the 10-second advantage in general classification that Cerrone holds, and that is very obviously uppermost on the mind of the little group that's ahead, and also very prominent in figuring in what's going on here in this chase group.
At this point, Cerrone was a minute and a half behind Brian.
And
he was probably in that group that they're showing now.
There he
yeah.
is in the
third
from
position.
the front, the pink jersey.
And he's got 2 of his teammates in front, the yellow Del Tongo Colnago teams.
Trying to minimize his losses at this time, but he has in fact lost the pink jersey on the road, and at the finish of the race, you say that Vicentini takes the Maglia Rosa, the pink jersey, and will wear it for some time to come.
Right, because I think that the Carrera Inox Grand team was third in the team time trial, and Vicentini is a very good time trialist, so I don't think he had lost very much in the prologue. So he's, I think it's at this stage that he dons the pink jersey.
We come to the final kilometer of the fourth stage, with this little group of 5 riders climbing quite well through the crowd, pressing in around them. It's amazing that the spectators leave so little room in between each other to permit the riders to pass. Here's the sprint.
And Hinault is leading it at this point.
And with his sprinting ability, will very nearly hold on for the victory.
And Seitz, yeah. Seitz won it from the Chilo Alfina team.
Here's the replay. You can see this is textbook how to win from behind. You take a shot, accelerate at the guy in his slipstream. Hinault looks quickly over his shoulder and sees Seitz already moving faster than he, having accelerated into that draft and slingshotting around. Here comes Cerrone in to finish with his 2 teammates.
And he's finishing 139 behind. So here we see Seitz, which is the stage winner, and then Vicentini, which at this point picked up the pink jersey.
And the white and green jerseys?
The white jersey is the Neo Pro, the best Neo Pro jersey. And then the green is the points. Here we go from Selva di Bar Gardena to Vittorio Veneto. And this is 226 kilometers, and it's the 5th stage of the Giro.
In the rain.
In the rain, no less.
So this one would start at high altitude and begin with a descent.
This begins with a very steep descent. Then they have a gradual climb to 2 mountain preams, and then it's somewhat of a descent all the way down to Vittorio Veneto.
And with the rain, the wet roads, this descent would have its elements of danger.
No question about it.
Nobody making any serious movement at this point early in. And you mentioned that because of the length of the races and the way these things sort of develop, that usually early on the race is as much a parade as anything else, that they'll just simply, everyone declares a truce up to a certain point at which the racing really begins. And of course there are exceptions to that, and occasionally you read about, hear about, or witness the odd breakaway from the gun, the desperate effort by a rider, or groups of riders who are away for 200 kilometers or more only to be caught near the finish.
Right, that happens a lot. You even have riders that have gained up to 20, 26 minutes and have been wearing the pink jersey on the road. But when the group really decides to react, they pick up the speed to such incredible levels during the last kilometers, when we're talking about the last maybe 50, 60 kilometers, and they can totally obliterate somebody's lead in a very short period of time, because the speeds at which they get going during that last hour and a half are incredible.
There's Moser, number 1, no longer wearing the pink jersey, but nevertheless the defending champion of the Giro d'Italia.
That's a very unique jersey, by the way, Brian. I don't know if you noticed it, but it's got a huge ice cream cone in the back.
The Gis team?
Yeah, the Gis, the Moser's team. It's a humongous ice cream cone right on the back of the jersey.
And he's got his troops up front right now, setting a very fast pace at this point. Looks back, and this is a very interesting shot here as the helicopter goes into the clouds, showing us the conditions really that the riders are racing under. It apparently is not particularly cold, but it certainly is wet.
This is the entrance into the city of Vittorio Veneto, which is a very old, very pretty city. It's quite old, and it's nestled right in a valley. It is not too far from where we do a lot of our training rides, so every once in a while we do have a ride going into this section here.
And on this descent, this is where the riders who have the skill, the bike handling skills, are really going to have to show their stuff. And it's quite, whoa, and this is Moser now down, as you can see. and harmlessly enough sliding along on the pavement because it is so wet. That caused him to lose control of his bike, and then worked in his favor once he was actually on the deck. You can see him actually sliding along with the bicycle bouncing beside him. He comes to a rest very quickly and harmlessly enough, picks his bike up and will get right back into the race. Even the best guys fall down every now and then.
Here we're looking at the last kilometer coming into the city. As you can see, it's a very old city, narrow streets, old castles right in the middle of town, etc. It's very picturesque.
And as poor as the weather conditions are, and the race finishing practically in the dark, there are still plenty of Italian fans to come and enjoy. This is another good sprint here. Good in that the racers are competing very determinedly, but one rider there feeling as though he was wrong, raising his hand, and I think correctly so, having been forced pretty well from one side of the road to the other by the apparent winner of the stage.
Yeah, correctly so is right, and as it turned out, the rider
right there, he switched very, very hard from one side of the road to the other. This is the kind of thing that the commissaires will look at. Did the rider in the front prevent the other rider from a fair opportunity to win the race? And I think in everyone's mind looking at this, the answer would have to be yes, that the Del Tongo rider in the yellow jersey was not given a fair opportunity to win the race by the green jerseyed rider who crossed the line first.
Well, the Del Tongo rider was awarded the stage, and there was a bit of controversy.
This is Da Silva, the rider in the green and red that was the apparent winner of the stage, and he was the runner-up in the final stage of the Tour of America here in the United States in a great sprint finish with two echelons of riders coming down the road. Ron Heyman on the left, the ultimate winner, and Da Silva on the far right side of the road, both thinking they had won the race, and probably 100 feet of distance from left to right between them.
Now we're looking at stage number 6, 232 kilometers, and they're going from Vittorio Veneto to Serbia. As you can see, the weather has changed considerably, and we're now enjoying some of the good Italian sunny weather. Here we have Bombini, and this is, by the way, the guy who was awarded the stage the previous day. There we have Cerrone.
And Del Tongo's strategy at this point is to pick the pace up, to keep it fast. There's a glimpse quickly of Greg LeMond, the American, and Visentini in the pink.
There's Greg wearing a helmet.
Some of the riders do choose, for one reason or another, to wear helmets, even though they're not required. It's interesting to look in magazines and to see coverage of races in Europe. It's very easy to see which races are in Belgium, because in Belgium they are required, the professionals are required to wear a helmet, and in none of the other countries are they required to, although some riders choose to do so nevertheless.
Well, in the Giro, there's a lot of riders that will wear a helmet, but only during the last 50, 60 kilometers. If they're going to attempt to participate in the sprint, there are some riders that actually just then pull the helmet out of their back pockets and put it on and participate in the sprint.
Here, apparently, a couple of riders touching wheels and going down, and now getting back up and into the race once again. The shot just previous showing the huge herd of riders going down the road. It's no wonder that situations like this develop from time to time, even among the best and most experienced professionals. It doesn't take much when you're traveling inches apart at 30 to 35 miles an hour to cause a chain reaction crash.
This stage, by the way, is as flat can be. So you're going to have probably another one of those humongous field sprints.
Again, it bears a lot of really close observation for riders aspiring to be field sprint winners. Obviously, many riders attempt to not have a race get down to a situation where they have to get into a field sprint. They'll try to break away and win alone or get themselves an advantage in some way where their race might be against a small number of riders, but in every rider's career, in every racer's career, it comes to a point when you've got to make your best effort in a big mass field sprint. And watching these stage finishes in the Giro d'Italia is as good an opportunity as you'll ever get to see how a large sprint develops, not only for the individuals, but how the team set up for the sprint.
Now we're in the last kilometer now, and we have a rider that has actually broken away from the group,
making a desperate bid for victory here alone, taking advantage of the lull that usually precedes a stage finish, but apparently he has been caught. We saw him just drifting off to the right side of that group as here comes a wild finish again.
I think we got Cerrone there on the left.
And Fröhler in the middle. There's Fröhler in the blue jersey in the center, but I think Cerrone taking that one. Very fine. And then at the back of the bunch, of course, when there are no bonuses for the top spots, or there are no bonuses remaining, there are only time bonuses for the top finishers, and once it is obvious that you will finish in the group, you just roll across the line and get the same time as the rest of the field. Places are insignificant in a stage race beyond the first half dozen or so.
Now I mistakenly called that rider Cerrone on the right. That's Frank Ost, the rider that's with the yellow jersey on the right side of the road there, which I believe is the guy that wins the stage.
And I believe it's Fröhler in the middle in blue.
Mm-hmm. And Rosola on the left there.
So three of the best sprinters in European professional racing. Fröhler, obviously realizing 30 or 40 meters before the line that he cannot win, just coasts across for third.
Okay, now we're moving on to the 7th stage, which is from Serbia to Jezi, and we're looking at a 185-kilometer stage. At this point, there is about 50 kilometers to the finish, and this group here has about 5.5 minutes.
Good-sized group of riders.
And we have the pink jersey in there as well.
This is Visentini in the main bunch.
Right.
Ahead of them, a small group that has 5.5 minutes.
Right. When you have a group like that with 50 kilometers to the finish, apparently there is no danger man in there, because otherwise they would have reeled him in before that.
So the leaders, the contenders at this point, having looked around and satisfied themselves that they are all in this large group, are unconcerned about the breakaway group out in front.
Correct. At this point, they just show us the general classification, and we have Visentini, which is wearing the pink jersey, and second to him is Bernard Hinault, sitting at comfortable 20 seconds behind them.
And these are the members of the breakaway group, none of whom were listed in the GC standings in the previous graphic.
Now we're almost at the finish, and we have two of them that have separated themselves at the front there. We're under the 1 kilometer banner.
So it's 2 of the 6 riders have now gained a small advantage, but the other 4 seem to be pretty determined to reel that back in. A lot of pride going into an opportunity for perhaps riders who are not contenders in general classification, and in fact lieutenants on some of the teams, seconds if you will to the team leaders. They have their opportunity to stand in the sun with a stage victory, and very often the motivation comes perhaps from it being your own hometown or near your own hometown.
Well, to any professional rider, to win a stage of the Giro or the Tour is actually money in the bank. Number one, because after the Giro and the Tour comes a season of criteriums, and these are by invitation, and you're actually given start money. And most of the guys that get invited to these criteriums are riders who have won stages. So in effect, what you're talking about is winning a stage to a rider. There's a significant increase in his potential to make money out of the sport.
Here, the Del Tongo team leads the group in, 1 minute and 40 seconds at this point behind the lead group. And another great field sprint coming up for what is 7th place in the stage. Look at this. This is great.
And as you saw earlier, Brian, and you pointed out very well, it was the Del Tongo team that was setting the pace line there. And the reason why they were setting the pace line is because they had their man Cerrone sitting about in third or fourth position. So what they would do at this point is they would each just take a pull until they can't go any further, and then swing over, and then the next Del Tongo guy takes a pull, and then the next Del Tongo guy, and they'll usually have somebody sitting right behind Cerrone, which means when Cerrone is ready to then do his sprint, the guy right behind him just slows down and lets a gap open up.
Here's a replay of the sprint of the leaders, and you can see that the riders are pushing tremendous gears to the finish, and this after 185 kilometers of racing, or well over 100 miles in their legs at this point.
Okay, we're going on to the 8th stage at this point, and we're going from Foggia to Matera. At this junction here, the Giro has been progressively moving south since it started in Verona, which is fairly to the north of Italy. And then it went north a little bit, turned around, and started moving south. And at this point, we're about halfway down the country, moving along the easternmost side.
Here's one of the tremendous parade starts of the Giro d'Italia, and likewise the Tour de France. These riders, nearly 200 in number, begin by parading out of a town. Virtually the entire town turns out, as you can see them lining the streets, and off the riders go into the countryside to race to another town, where they'll stop for the night and take it up again the next day. And the pace early on here is quite fast. They have, well, this is the finish.
No, this it was a rather uneventful stage, and what they were showing was the sprint.
And here's the replay of the sprint then. And in the blue and white in the center is Frühler. To his right, our left, is Da Silva, and these are the guys that, when they get close to the finish line, are going to come to the front and make the sprint. You can see the tremendous effort that Frühler makes, and even a second effort that comes up just short, as Da Silva is able to get his front wheel across the line inches ahead of Frühler, who throws his bike with a tremendous arm extension in an effort to win.
That's actually a good shot of throwing your bike, you know. And you can see the effort that Frühler is doing at that point, just to throw that front wheel forward.
And a real good freeze frame shot there, showing two guys. And here's apparently a very large mishap in the middle of a wheat field, or something resembling a wheat field, and riders trooping through the grass to get around the fallen ones who are in the middle of the road. A ball of confusion here as the mechanics and team managers and support personnel and motorcycle riders and everybody attempt to get back underway, and the racers themselves going well off into the weeds here in an effort to get themselves back onto the road and in contention, back into contention.
Let me explain for a minute, Brian. What occurred here is that in Foggia, where the race started, they had a 45-kilometer criterium, and that's what we saw the finish of. Characteristically, this 45-kilometer criterium had an average speed of 48 kilometers an hour, which was approximately 30 miles an hour. Then afterwards, I was in the morning, and then about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, they went off on this 167-kilometer road stage, point-to-point stage. So that's what we're looking at now, and that crash that we saw was part of the road stage section of the day.
Now this is Bob Roll from California, who is one of the American professionals competing in the Giro d'Italia in the colors of the 7-Eleven racing team. And Bob Roll distinguished himself following the Giro d'Italia with a stage win in the Giro d'America, if you will, the Coors Classic in the United States. And here he's showing himself quite well with a solo effort, perhaps grandstanding at this point, or hoping that he'll get some help in the form of other riders to come up and join him and get a breakaway going. And then we move quickly once again to the finish. A rider who's apparently away near the end is going to also get swallowed up as he sits up in despair on the left side of the screen there, and the entire peloton just dashing past him to the finish line.
No, what we're looking at actually is a mistake. It's one circuit around the finish. They're supposed to go one loop around before the actual finish, so that guy was under the mistaken impression, which again, by what was the Italian telling us, the commentator, was very predictable. Now I believe that we have the actual sprint here.
And this looks a little bit more like a sprint, with only one rider sprinting before, and here we have the whole bunch just galloping to the line. And
that was Da Silva who won that sprint, by the way, Brian.
Again, Da Silva, one of the premier field sprinters, just as Davis Phinney is here in the United States. Davis Phinney is in this race and will show himself well, but by his own admission comes just short of what these seasoned European professionals have in terms of being able to finish at the end of long road races.
I think that in talking to Phinney, he was interviewed in Italy, and he mentioned that what he's lacking is that progression or that acceleration that a lot of these guys have, and where they can actually start the sprint at 30 plus miles an hour and then progress it or accelerate up to in the 40s or the low 30s. And he lacks that constant acceleration, because if you see a lot of these guys when they finish, when they go across the finish line, they're still accelerating. And by his own admission, Davis says that he actually slows down. There you see incredible bike handling, by the way, where two riders, one of them, Van der Belt, with the purple jersey, almost collided with another rider.
Right behind the two that were leaning on each other was, in fact, Davis Phinney, the rider of whom we were just speaking. Here is Da Silva wearing the green points or sprint leader's jersey, about to demonstrate his ability to uncork a magnum of champagne on the crowd.
Okay, we move on to the 9th stage, which is Matera Crotone, and we're looking at 237 kilometers. Again, this stage is as flat as they come. 237 totally flat kilometers. Vicentini still wearing the pink jersey, with Hinault sitting in second position at
28 seconds.
28 seconds, correct.
And Le Mans sitting down 7th position at just over 2 minutes. This is the 9th stage of the Giro d'Italia for 1985.
Here we're looking at them 15 kilometers from the finish.
And altogether, predictably, after a flat stage, even though it is some 140 miles or more in length,
totally flat, and we have a compact group. The Colombians, by the way, had a team in this Giro, but it seems like it was almost too flat for them in stages. They would do well when the road started going up, but they would take a beating on these flat stages, because they just don't have the 35, 40 miles an hour on their legs, and they just sometimes they would actually get dropped on some of these flat portions, or else they might get dropped in the flat portion, get up to a hill, then work their buns off to get to the top of the hill with the leaders, and then to lose it in the descent and in the next flat portion. The Colombians traditionally have had some difficulty in Europe, particularly on the flats. They have no problems with the hills. They're used to worse hills than anything that they have in Europe. They just have a lot of difficulty with the speed and the flats.
By contrast, the Dutch riders, who have absolutely no mountains or hills to climb whatsoever in their entire country, are able to train themselves to climb well, because it takes very much of the same ability to be able to go 35 miles an hour on the flats. If you're small and light, the same kind of power can be applied in a lower gear to go up hills. The Colombians just don't have any flat places to train on, and they therefore have not developed the horsepower. It's just a question of horsepower. Many of the Colombian riders are very, very small, very slightly built, and just don't have the raw power it takes to go fast on flat ground.
Here we have the riders setting up for the sprint.
And it's going to be another wild one, it appears, with riders wall to wall going into almost a hairpin turn to the finish. And headlights flashing, the caravan comes to the finish line after nearly 6 hours. You can see the running time at 5:48 and a half. And here's the dash.
Rossola and Bontempi second. By the way, these two riders are from the same town. Rossola rides for Bianchi and Bontempi rides for Carrera Inoxbrand, and they train together all the time. And they're both incredible sprinters. They're about the same height, they're about the same weight. They're both very large for riders. They're not good climbers, either one of them, yet they're excellent, excellent, excellent sprinters.
And a happy young man, obviously.
He won in a big way, this one.
That was quite a significant margin of victory there. And Visentini again with the pink jersey as the overall leader. It's obvious why the terrain is flat there at the ocean.
Now we're in Calabria, which is, we're hitting the southernmost portion of Italy. And we're going across now. We're actually going from the east coast of Italy to the west coast of Italy. So you're going to see some serious climbing here.
Solo breakaway at this point, or a solo effort at this point. One rider having extracted himself from the wedge shape of the field here. As they will head towards some climbing portions of the course and are now beginning to get into what amounts to the foothills of a major climb. There you can see the La Vie Claire jerseys and Greg LeMond sitting in second position there in the field chasing.
At that point, La Jarreta had sent Wilson up ahead and to set the pace in the climb, which is something that climbers do quite frequently. They send one of their teammates up ahead of the road so that everybody else does the chasing, and then they just sit back there. And when they catch up with the teammate that they sent up the road, then they set up their own attack. So you can see now the group is beginning to break up.
Riders losing off the back. We would expect the De Silvas and Freulers and sprinters, the guys who are there at the finish of the flat stages, would be the ones that are drifting off the back. Here comes Moser, I believe, at the front.
No, that's Chioccioli. It's a young man, and this one, his physiognomy is even similar to Coppi's. So there's another one of those let's have another Coppi stereotype kind of riders.
Long and thin legs. Beautiful countryside.
There is Visentini with the pink jersey. At this point, the Italian commentator is talking about the fact that Cerrone is nowhere to be seen. Oh, here we see him now. So he's lost quite a bit of time, which is something that is going to put him, this stage, I believe, puts Cerrone out of contention of the leadership or anywhere near the leadership of the Giro.
A former winner, Cerrone, two-time winner of the Giro d'Italia. It's not to be his year in 1985.
It's actually amazing that Cerrone could win a race like the Giro with as much climbing as they usually have in it, because he definitely doesn't have a climber's body. Cerrone is a typical sprinter body. He's short, he's stocky, And how he can keep up with these guys climbing, which there's a lot of specialists here, a lot of climbing specialists, and how he can keep up with these guys is quite interesting. And in order to win the Giro, you have to climb well, not just defend yourself in the climbs. You have to climb well.
There was again one of the red, white, and green 7-Eleven USA jerseys going through there, climbing behind Moser, who also didn't look like he was in great spirits at this point either. He looked like as though he was suffering a bit on the climb himself, the defending champion of the Giro.
That's another guy who's actually made himself into a climber in the last couple of years. He has done a lot of anaerobic threshold work, and his training for the hour record has really turned him around. Since that point, not only has he won the Giro, but he's become the premier time trialist in the world. And he's actually developed into a halfway decent climber in an international scale.
We caught a glimpse briefly of Le Mans going by in that group right there, wearing number 87. And there's De Silva in the green points jersey. And here comes the sprint. The green points jersey very prominent at the front, as you might expect. De Silva has gotten himself in a position to be near the finish and produces yet another stage win to add to his collection of points for stage finishes.
Da Silva, by the way, Brian, is Portuguese, and he was a pupil of Agostinho. Agostinho was a famous Portuguese rider, probably the oldest rider at the time that he died last year in an incident in a sprint where a dog came out on the road and he actually went over the handlebars and apparently hit his head, and the next day he was history.
And so too is the 10th stage of the 1985 Giro d'Italia history, with Da Silva enjoying the victory champagne, Visentini displaying once again the pink jersey as the overall leader.
And here we start on the 11th lap, and this one is from Paola to Salerno. I guess we're somewhere near the coast, and we're looking at somebody here watching some snails. Probably some good seafood restaurant is somewhere around the corner here.
The fans are occupying themselves until the arrival of the peloton, and here it approaches now with 33 kilometers to the finish, and a long single file line. Apparently the group pretty much intact at this point.
This is one of the long stages, Brian. It's 240 kilometers, and it has a little bit of climbing in the middle, and then towards the end is somewhat flat.
As the camera sweeps up and down this lead group here, we see Ron Kiefel from Colorado competing as part of the 7-Eleven team in the Giro d'Italia, the 68th Giro d'Italia. Ron Kiefel, an outstanding American rider that would appear to have the tools necessary to make himself into a good professional in the European mold. Leading this little breakaway group right now, Ron Kiefel, the American, on the 11th stage of the Giro d'Italia.
As you can see, their group is right on their heels, and it doesn't seem like it's really going to pan out, this breakaway. No, there you got the old group together again.
So we're setting up for what could appear to be another one of those mad dashes to the finish. And we're looking at now what would appear to be a counterattack group with trains on one side, cars on the other, and the riders going down the middle. There's one of the 7-Eleven jerseys at the front of the...
That's Eric, isn't he?
That's Eric Heiden.
That's correct.
And easy to spot because of his size. He's certainly one of the largest bicycle racers anywhere around, physically large.
Eric did quite well in this Giro, by the way, winning the Hot Spots competition.
These are the special sprints along the road. Here's Borjacas, who's also an unusual individual. He's Colombian, but he's just as blonde as they come, and races with the Colombian team, has competed a number of times in the United States, has earned medals in the Course Classic, and we see him now.
I think that Eric attributed the shape that he rode himself into by riding the Giro for his win at the U.S. Pro Championships. Is that correct?
Very, very much so. I think that the fitness that he gained while he was in Europe is what gave him what he needed to get a very deserving victory. He did not luck into or back into that professional championship victory in Philadelphia. He earned it very definitely. He was in all the right places at the right time. He was in the winning breakaway, and by the time he got close to the finish line, was very definitely the most powerful sprinter of the breakaway group. Eric Heiden, we're speaking of course, has really made the transition to a racing cyclist that he began after the 1980 Olympic Games, where he won 5 medals on speed skates.
And there we have Chris Carmichael, another rider from 7-Eleven. I know Chris quite well because he's from South Florida. As a matter of fact, he's right here in Miami. And I remember Chris almost when he started riding. He's a very, very gutsy rider, a good rider, and has proven himself to be quite valuable to the team, the 7-Eleven team, while doing the Giro.
He's another rider who has distinguished himself quite well domestically and has now made a very complete transition to an international professional rider. There's really a legitimate professional class in the United States now. There are riders who have made themselves, have turned pro and have raced in Europe and are also racing in the United States as professionals and have made a legitimate transition to a pro class. And Chris Carmichael is one of those.
It seems like we're pretty close to the finish. Look at the people at the overpass. I mean, there's almost a traffic jam right on top of that overpass, people just stopping to see the riders go by.
Here a little trio of riders has gained maybe 100 yards, 100 meters or so on the rest of the field, and as quickly as we say that, we're left in another one of these mad dash finishes with no clear winner obvious, but
we had Cerrone there, and we had Freuler and Alocchio. Alocchio is a rider from here. That's the guy who's leading right now. He's a first-year pro, Stefano Alocchio, and he actually won 2 stages of the Giro this year. He then went on to win the silver medal at the points race, the professional points race. He rides for the Bottega Vaporella team. Same team as the Silva.
On the far left of the screen is Freuler.
Freuler, correct.
And the winner just to the right of the screen, just to Freuler's left, is the stage winner, Alocchio. Another great mad dash sprint finish there.
Well, now we're going on to the 12th stage, which is an individual time trial, 38 kilometers.
Here's Cerrone of Del Tonga, and with a time trial to try to gain back time on the leaders. As we had mentioned several stages ago, Cerrone pretty much out of contention in terms of overall victory, but he'll nevertheless use his skills. Here's Moser, probably the premier time trialist, using a disc rear wheel at this point and wearing number 1, the defending champion.
This, by the way, is not a flat time trial. There's 2 little rises, and one of them is fairly significant. It goes from 48 meters to 171 meters. Here we have Bernard Hinault with his look pedals.
They're patterned after ski bindings and are quite unique, and probably the best non-toe clip and strap system that's yet been devised, at least apparently. It's a good idea. You're able to kick out of them by just twisting your foot to the side, much like a ski binding.
Yeah, they're very easy to get on, and your foot is not totally trapped in there. It's actually a very valid system. I believe that they're going to be marketed in the United States by Descent. And I think that if they're not already available, they should be quite soon. At least, from what I understand, towards the end of this year, they will be available in this country.
Here we see the current leader's time, it's Nedeman, and we see Giovanetti of Italy beating that time to take the lead at this point in the time trial competition, with many of the competitors yet to finish. Here's Moser wearing the number 1 and riding that disc rear wheel bike.
very, very smooth style that Moser has.
È teso, molto in partenza, forse prima di trovare il ritmo ci mette un momento.
It's a lot to be said by watching these professional riders and how they carry themselves on their bicycle. Read and heard about them for so many years, and now we have an opportunity to actually see them doing what they do better than anyone in the world. Moser, one of the top riders for many years, and is now has set a good example for many of our American riders who have no doubt looked up to and worshipped this man for years. And here they go to Europe and compete in his home turf, and are making good names for themselves now, some of the Americans.
Here's Bernard Hinault, and he's using both front and rear disc wheels, and with the whatever they have written on them, it actually gives the optical illusion that they're certainly not very round, but I can assure you that these things are as round as they come. And these disc wheels are a little bit different from the ones that Moser uses. These are a lot lighter than Moser's disc wheels. And that is probably the reason why he used them, in spite of the fact that there is a little bit of climbing on this time trial. Because I know that climbing with those disc wheels is extremely, extremely difficult. I have ridden them several times, and once you get momentum going, they're very, very effective. But to climb with them is an additional weight that you definitely don't need, particularly in something that turns, where you actually would like to save weight in any kind of climbing situation.
The race of truth, Bernard Hinault, certainly another of the great time trialists. He has earned himself victories, many say, by virtue of his time trialing ability. And here he is in that race of truth. Here's Visentini now, the overall leader in the pink jersey. And he will do his bit to defend that jersey with an individual effort against the clock.
He is the last rider, and the reason why is because on the stage races, on time trials, they start in reverse order as the general classification. So Hinault was the previous rider, and now Visentini is the one that takes it in. Now this can be good and it can be bad, Brian, because sometimes you have weather conditions changing from the beginning to the end. There are so many riders, 150 riders. You probably have them starting here at least in minute and a half intervals. We're talking about the difference of a couple of hours between the lead riders and the end riders, and weather conditions can change considerably.
Here we have a rider coming in to finish.
Cerrone, that is.
And this is Cerrone, and as we can see, he has not gained or has not earned a victory in this particular stage. The technique of going in reverse general classification order is also twofold. It's very interesting for the fans because the best riders go later.
By the way, that was Moser.
Here we see Moser now posting the fastest time ahead of Tommy Prim's time there at 47:30. Moser does 47:28. And so is the current leader. But this reverse general classification order is interesting for the fans, and it's also useful for the riders because they know how fast they have to go. And here is Hinault demonstrating his time trial superiority. He is doing 46:30 and has beat the time of Moser by nearly a full minute. So Bernard Hinault, a decisive situation for him as he comes in to turn a very, very fast time. Now Greg LeMond, similarly racing here, comes in, is not going to beat his teammate Hinault in the time trial, but has turned a very fast time nevertheless and will move up in the standings. Visentini, you can see now the time for him, 48:12 against Hinault's 46:30. Could very well be enough for Hinault to take the overall lead in the Giro d'Italia for 1985.
Oh no, that's more than enough, Brian, because what he needed to remember was 28 seconds, and here he's taken almost 2 minutes. So
and there you can see on the standings that Hinault has in fact moved in.
And you actually have then Moser moved into second position, and LeMond moved into third. I think Visentini has been relegated to fifth or sixth.
Here is Hinault donning the pink jersey, the Maglia Rosa. Bernard Hinault will be the race leader now in the 68th Giro d'Italia, and will be, with the strength of his La Vie Claire team, a very, very tough man to unseat for the overall victory.
Well, we're moving on to stage number 13, and the riders are looking at 154 kilometers from Medaloni to Frosinone, and this is a relatively flat stage. It's a little bit broken up at the end, but it's overall is relatively flat.
The leader here is Patellaro, and he is making his effort to be a lone victor, a solo winner in the Giro d'Italia, to take a stage victory, and is working very hard for it, and as you can see is at least out of sight of the peloton at this point.
That's a good shot there. I'm sure the road is tending to go up a bit, and he's just really working at muscling those gears.
Again, this is Patellaro, not a top name rider, but nevertheless doing a fine job.
At 20 kilometers from the finish, we have now 5 riders that are away.
And there was one of the hot spots there, apparently. One of the hot spots were climbing special prizes with a banner over the road, which is why the speed had picked up very briefly at that point. Now the riders have settled back into more of a cooperative effort. 4 of them seem to be doing that, while a counterattack here has been launched by one of the 5 riders in that breakaway. And you can see perhaps why, because the peloton is very close indeed to catching that breakaway. The lone rider in front feeling as though if he can make an attack and get away from the small break, that he alone may not be caught. If the field catches his breakaway companions, they may ignore the fact that he is then out away alone.
Here we have a situation where they're actually coming down on the sprint, and we're probably within a kilometer or so of the finish line. We have the teams setting up. We have the yellow Del Tongos. I'm sure they're trying to move Cerrone up. And here we have the actual finish.
There's looks like Freuler.
There's Freuler again, sure enough.
In that blue and white Italia jersey, with his hands in the air, another stage win for a fellow that's certainly one of the best in the business. You can see Freuler on the left of the screen, powering his way to the line. He takes a glance down between his arms, where if there was a rider close to him, he would be able to see the wheel or the shadow, at least, of someone behind him, close behind him. Now he takes a full panorama view of the rest of the field, and seeing no one challenging him for the sprint, puts his hands in the air and has done his job in earning a stage victory for his team and for himself.
He certainly won this one handily, Brian. There's nobody really contesting the sprint with him, not at least nobody dangerously close. There he actually looked back and figured that he had enough time to raise his arms and take it easy.
He's a full bike length clear of the second place rider. And with that stage win, dons the maroon jersey. There is the white jersey of the best young pro, and another of the special jerseys, the green one.
This one is stage number 14, 195 kilometers. And here we're going to see some climbing. Now, the Giro is going north at this point, and they're actually going right through the center of Italy. In so doing, they're going to be facing quite a bit of climbing. And here we have, in this stage, there's 4 mountain premes, the last one of which is the actual finish line. What that means is that the finish line is considered a mountain preme insofar as the points awarded are concerned towards the mountain classification.
They're definitely in the mountains here with a hairpin descent, and these switchback descents can provide some thrills, chills, and spills. The riders appear to be fortunate in that it's dry and sunny. You can see the switchbacks enable the lead group to look up to the side of themselves and see any chase that might be coming at this point. These riders doing in excess probably of 55 to 60 miles an hour at this point. And the motorcycles with their hands full trying to keep up with the racing bicyclists. There's Oaxacas, the Colombian, easy to spot in his jersey with the blonde hair. and one of the Del Tongo yellow jerseys on a very, very fast descent in this stage.
That rider is Pagnin. You probably remember him from the Tour of America last year, Brian.
Roberto Pagnin, a good finishing sprinter, and here showing himself well in the descent. This stage has obviously broken the field up pretty severely here. As little groups are all over the road on this downhill portion of the course. The climb has broken it up, and the different abilities of riders to descend. This is where the brave guys really come to the front, the ones who have that special bravado to be able to descend very rapidly, to use their brakes as little as possible, to corner and hang it out on the hairy edge, so to speak, to go downhill very fast. Merckx was always quite good at this and confident of his ability. Here's LeMond descending quite well, and is a good downhill rider, according to many.
That's Cioccioli. We were speaking of him earlier. This is the Coppi lookalike, and he's a very, very good climber. And apparently he took a good lead on the climb, and now he's trying to maintain it on the descent. The only guy that's been able to stay with him is a fellow by the name of Giuliani, which is one of Moser's trusted lieutenants. This guy played a very significant role in the stage that was won by Andy Hempstead, because he's the one that kept Moser's losses to a minimum, helping him going up that hill without really falling off the pace.
And there's the man that we were speaking of on another climb at this point.
Yeah, this is a climb that is leading to the finish, Brian, and as I mentioned earlier, the actual finish itself is going to be considered towards mountain preem prizes.
Here's the final kilometer banner, telling us there's 1 kilometer, 6/10 of a mile remaining to the finish.
He's got about a 48-second lead on the main group. There's a couple of riders in between him and the group, but the group is like 48 seconds behind.
Looks like a stage win. And a stage win alone, which is...
Mind you, this finishing climb is 15 kilometers, so he's actually done this entire 15 kilometers by himself, with the group at anywhere between 30 and 45 seconds behind them, and that's not an easy thing to do for 15 kilometers. You know, you have to work hard, because you know that the guys behind you are not taking it easy.
You see that over 5.5 hours is how long it has taken the winner to get to the finish line, and here comes his margin of victory showing on the right side of the screen.
This is Michael Wilson, by the way, the Australian.
15 seconds behind the leader, and now the bunch sprinting in.
And Moser got the third place there.
And now the rest of the riders who are part of the group will just roll across the line, knowing that they will receive the same time, which is 24 seconds behind the winner's time. Here's our stage winner and some of the special jersey
buon pomeriggio, siete
wearers.
collegati in diretta con Perugia, dove siamo in attesa della conclusione della 15ª tappa.
15 stage, and from L'Aquila to Perugia.
Stiamo attraversando
203 kilometers or 120 miles approximately. And here is one of the 7-Eleven American jerseys. This is Bob Roll again, showing himself at the front. He's a pretty good-sized rider. As we said, following the Giro d'Italia, distinguished himself at America's National Tour by winning a stage in Vale.
This is going to be a very significant race for U.S. cycling, Brian, as you will see.
There's a good shot of Bob Roll.
Ecco Vis, questo svizzero che sta facendo un grossissimo lavoro. Ecco, con il numero 188 vediamo Zola,
getting themselves in the picture.
Giovanni Zola, ed ecco con il numero 92, abbiamo visto Cesare Cipollini, un
showing the
altro dei
difference in the
giovani
styles of the various riders. You can see
la
that
formazione di
not only
Montanelli,
the physiques,
diciamo,
but the
un altro degli
riding
ex
styles of the
giovani
riders are
che hanno
quite different,
avuto
and it's
qualche
shown very
problema nel
graphically
momento
by
del
moving from one
passaggio al
rider to another,
professionismo,
as
come
they
Chioccioli,
have
anche
just
Cipollini,
done with this
che
great
Montanelli
motorcycle
cerca
shot here.
di far tornare agli antichi
Here we have
splendori, ancora con numero
Giuliani,
5, Stefano Giuliani, sicuramente
the same rider that
uno dei
was with Cioccioli
più
yesterday,
importanti
that I mentioned was a very good
per Moser, un Moser che sta
domestique of
guidando
Moser.
la sua squadra
And it seems like Moser has got his team out front.
Evidentemente a questo punto mi sembra
Keeping
che
the pace
si
fast,
possa già
and
stabilire
the
che
technique that is used in
Moser
this
ha
manner
intenzione
is
di
usually
fare la
indicative
corsa in questo finale.
of a team wanting to minimize other teams' abilities to attack or to gain any time. Here we see Bob Roll again, significantly at the front. 7-Eleven team co-sponsored by Hoonvid, vacuum cleaner manufacturers in Europe, and the first time that an American trade team competed in an international stage race as a unit. Next year, of course, they intend in 1986 to put a team in the Tour de France as well.
And Roll is certainly taking his pulse. He's certainly not riding anybody's wheel. He's doing his share of the work without a doubt. Unfortunately, the group is right at their heels, so it doesn't look like this is going to finish in a breakaway.
And there's
a classic counterattack by Kiefel. On his heels, we have Gary Knetemann, and Knetemann, as you might recall, was winner of the World Championships a few years back, formerly with Raleigh. He had a very, very bad accident 2 years ago, and he's this year getting back onto full shape again.
So Kiefel and Knetemann, certainly Ron Kiefel would have been an admirer of Jerry Knetemann. Kiefel, the young American, now working as a partner of Knetemann.
Well, I don't think that there was much of a partnership here, because Knetemann has been on Kiefel's wheel the entirety of this little attempt.
Look up the road and see that their advantage is almost negligible at this point, but they're in the final kilometer of the race. And Kiefel is not looking back at all, and Knetemann is content to take a sleigh ride on the wheel of the tall Colorado American there. Here comes the rest of the bunch, led by the green jersey and the purple jersey.
Pretty severe corner there just before the finish. And as you can see, Kiefel has been leading the whole time.
And he's pretty well outdistanced Knetemann here. Kiefel has started his sprint. Knetemann is in a good position to take a run at him at the finish, but Kiefel is just looking down under his arm there, making sure that he can see if Knetemann is going to make a move on him, and he does not. Ron Kiefel now earns the first very significant stage win for an American besides Greg LeMond. Greg LeMond, of course, in a class by himself for a number of years now in Europe, but here is another American rider winning a stage in a major international stage race, the Giro d'Italia. Ron Kiefel gets his chance to spray the crowd with champagne and enjoy a little bit of it himself.
Very, very significant victory for the United States and for the 7-Eleven team.
There you can see the margin of victory, some 10 bike lengths in the final analysis.
He just pulled away. I mean, he certainly earned that win.
Here we are at a
16th stage, Brian, 217 kilometers from Perugia to Cecina.
Day after day, riding in excess of 100 miles.
It's a relatively flat stage, but towards the last 30, 40 kilometers, there's a couple of climbs in it. Not very significant, however.
And here we have what is typically an early move in a race by riders who, for one reason or another, see fit to escape from the field, including one of the La Viclaire riders. And this little trio.
9 kilometers from the finish at this point.
So, rather than early in the race, this is in fact quite late in the race, and this little trio of riders looking perhaps to earn themselves a measure of fame and fortune by winning a stage in the Giro d'Italia. There we see Hinault in the pink jersey, the race leader, tucked in the middle of the field with many of his teammates around him, and one of his teammates, in fact, in that little breakaway trio.
So we have 3 men leading the stage at this point, and then we have the group right behind, and as we can see, Moser's got his boys working, and we see at least the top 5, the top front 6 riders or 5 riders are from the GIS team. Seems like Moser probably had the intention of winning this stage, and he put his men up front to reel in the breakaway.
There is the breakaway now as they look over their shoulders a bit nervously.
Now you can see these guys are working, Brian. I mean, and also one thing that is very significant is the length of the pulls that they take. It's not they're not taking 100-yard pulls or 50-yard pulls. They go to the front and they pull for maybe half a kilometer or something like that, and sustain the speed. It's quite remarkable, huh?
And different, I think, from racing here in America, where if there's a breakaway of 4 or 5 riders on a 1-mile course, they'll each take 2 or 3 pulls per lap. And as you say, here the riders are obviously taking much longer pulls than that. You can see the distance between the breakaway now in the field, and could be another one of those eat 'em alive at the finish line situations. In fact, here comes the peloton right past those 3 riders, and it's got to be a very despairing sort of thing if you're out there working for 40 or 50 miles only to be swallowed up within a few kilometers of the finish.
There we have Da Silva in 3rd position there with his green jersey, and Vanderbilt almost right behind them.
And Freuler.
Now there you have a classic move. There you have the man right behind Da Silva slowing down and letting that gap open up. Now you have a Italia rider who's convinced that he's got Freuler on his wheel, except he's got Da Silva, and you're going to see when he turns around and sees it as Da Silva there, he's just in utter disgust, because he's convinced that he's got his teammate Freuler right behind him. See, there you go. He turned around, Morandi turns around and realizes that it's not his teammate back there.
So what he thought was a tactical bit of genius, and turned out to be quite a blunder, permitting Da Silva of a rival team to produce another stage victory.
But not that. Da Silva, as you can see, gets eaten up here.
Yes, he does. The line, and false finish line there as a ray of sunlight appeared to be the finish line. We have a Del Tongo yellow jersey here.
It's Cerrone. That was quite a sprint, Brian, because that speed was top end from. I think that they were at top end at 200 meters from the finish. Look, here we go, Cerrone, and that's Bontempi right behind them.
There's Da Silva, who was committed to the line by the time he had gotten that tremendous lead out. And in 3rd, we have a 7-11 jersey. And it's probably, yes, it is. It appears to be Davis Finney. You'll see him fade, though, I believe.
Right. That's what we were talking about that he mentioned in that interview, is that he just doesn't have that acceleration. Now, notice how Cerrone is still accelerating away from him.
Well, actually, Finney does appear to hold on for 3rd, while Cerrone, as you say, accelerating away from even Davis Finney, who in this country is no one accelerates away from Davis Finney in the United States. It's a perfect example of the difference between the abilities of the riders here and what we're used to seeing here in the United States and what exists in Europe.
Okay, we're on stage 17, 243 kilometers, and this is go from Cecina to Modena. Modena, some of you might know, is where Ferraris are made.
And again, a group of riders working together here. Very nice echelon being executed by these half dozen or so riders. They appear to be taking short pulls, not like what we described earlier, as they each will move in an echelon. Apparently there's a bit of a crosswind.
Right, well, you got enough riders here to have an echelon. When you have 3 riders, or a double pace line in essence, when you have 3 riders, you just have to resign yourself to the fact of taking long pulls.
One of the riders is apparently having a mechanical problem over on the far left. He holds his hand up. He's holding his left hand up to indicate a flat tire, probably a front flat.
No, I believe that what he's asking is for the team car to come over, and what they do, see, they notify one of the motorcycles. Now the motorcycle in turn notifies the team vehicle, and then the team vehicle is allowed to come up to the rider. That's usually the standard here. You first notify the motorcycle, because the motorcycles are always nearby, not just the camera motorcycle, but they have judges' motorcycles very close to the riders. And then with the radio they can notify the team car and authorize, in essence, authorize the team car to come to the front. Now in this case, I believe, from what I'm listening from the Italian commentator, is that he's asking for some food. It's 243 kilometers, and it seems like this breakaway has been away for quite some time now. So I think that there at some point where still would be worthwhile to eat something, so that he might have some extra fuel there for the finish.
There, in fact, was the team car pulling up next to the rider who had requested it. And this is an example of an echelon or double pace line working quite well. You can see the riders will pull off into the wind, while the riders advancing will move up on the windward side, so to speak. And very, very smooth working little unit here that can make a tremendous amount of speed.
And they're all doing their job, you know, they're all taking their pulls. Nobody's trying to sit in the back and get a free ride out of it.
Other than perhaps briefly to take a drink or something to eat and then move right back into the rotation.
This is the chase group. Apparently there's a chase group behind that breakaway, and this is the chase group here.
They're not as well organized as you can see. This group here is kind of in shambles. No one is making an organized effort to keep this group moving. You can see that the rider in the yellow that just pulled off the front moved with 2 riders behind him back into the line. So on paper at least, or apparently that group would have less chance of gaining ground than the lead group, which is working very well together. Here's Hinault in the pink jersey, the race leader, and his teammates surrounding him.
Right, there's certainly there. He's got, I think, 2 in front and 1 behind, just about, so he's in good company.
There's the Neo-Pro, the white jersey of the best first-year professional rider.
There he's actually called for the team car
as well. And here comes the last bit to the finish line.
Apparently one of the guys was able to get away from that breakaway. Actually, they're breaking up because I see another rider, almost 2 riders behind them.
Here's the stage win.
That's, yeah, it makes sense that Gissinger would be the one to get away from them, because Gissinger is an excellent time trialist. And it seems like in the last few kilometers he just took a flyer from the breakaway.
Gissinger is Swiss, and the team, if I'm not mistaken, was the Italian Bianchi team with the baby blue jersey.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Here's Del Tongo in yellow for 4th, and the rest of that little breakaway group sprinting in for the remaining places. And then the field in the distance, way in the distance. So 4.5 minutes.
Exactly, yeah. Now they've already been riding for 6 hours and 28 minutes at that point.
Del vincitore, Giesinger 6:28:12.
Have yet to see the finish line. This is the main peloton with most of the contending riders in it. Meanwhile, the stage winner is already enjoying the champagne.
Nei confronti della maglia rosa. Ed è Chinetti, poi Zadrobilek.
Now we have the field sprint here, yeah.
Almost 10 minutes behind the time on the right is the time behind the leaders. Now Bernard Hinault, the race leader, joins the stage winner.
Obviously, there was no danger man in that breakaway. Otherwise, I'm sure they wouldn't have let it go for 10 minutes. Here we have stage number 18th, and this is from Monza, where the famous automobile racetrack is, to Domodossola. It's 128 kilometers, so it's a relatively short stage.
Bernard Hinault with the pink jersey, number 81.
Relatively flat stage, I might add, Brian.
And they appear to be rolling along on a bit of a descent, or certainly a flat section here along the river. And the peloton pretty much intact at this point. There's Moser making a big effort at the front right now.
L'unico uomo che deve controllare, l'unico uomo che gli faccia veramente paura in questo giro è Francesco Moser. Bernard Hinault ha altresì detto, Moser però è...
At this point, Hinault was pretty much shadowing any move that Moser made, because there was not much time separating one from the other. So it was in Hinault's best interest to make sure that he kept Moser close at bay.
Mentre ecco Petito che Giorgio Martino ha intervistato alla partenza, anche Petito ha svolto un ottimo lavoro
close shots.
per aiutare
some of Moser's teammates, and La Claire, and now Del Tongolo. This is...
That's my friend Loro, the fellow that I mentioned earlier that comes out and rides with us quite often.
4 chilometri dalla conclusione, ecco
Gary Knetterman,
poi Girotto,
Greg LeMond.
Ecco l'ex campione del mondo Greg LeMond, ancora abbastanza nervoso per il via vai.
Apparently Greg at that point called the team car, because I noticed the motorcycle gesturing. Yeah, and yeah, here we go. Apparently Greg had called the team car. Last kilometer, and again, being a flat stage, we're going to have a heck of a sprint.
You can see the pace picking up at the front, and the first few riders in single file. And now the sprint begins, that acceleration to the line, and the lead outs, the teams working to get their sprint man up front.
At this point, it is hairy, to say the least.
It is very hairy at this point. There you can see the Italian fans who seem to enjoy pelting the riders with whatever,
and that's
confetti
Rossola.
of some kind.
Rossola again, Brian.
Rossola and Freuler.
Freuler in second, yeah. Here we can see it in slow motion from above.
And Freuler is the one who's leading it out in the front. And Rossola makes a move from third and jumps and accelerates quite well to the opposite side of the road, to the left of the screen, the left side of the road. Freuler has led it out from the front and is hoping to use his speed and power to hold off anyone, but Rossola has the acceleration, and with Freuler fading a bit, throws his bike, but Rossola has enough to take the stage win. Hinault with another stems first toss of victory flowers into the crowd, and now Rossola enjoys the victory champagne.
And that's Van der Velde with the purple jersey.
E la tappa che però
Okay, 19th stage from Domodossola to St. Vincent.
247 kilometers, 150 miles approximately.
Non ci sono stati episodi particolari.
And here we got two significant climbs. One right off the very beginning, and then we're going to have another one fairly close to the finish.
Al tandem franco-statunitense che non molla assolutamente di un metro la scia di Moser. Ha tentato uno scatto, si è portato sulla destra, poi si è portato sulla sinistra. Ecco, vedete che Francesco si volta, ma Hinault è lì, lo marca stretto, cerca di innervosirlo.
The Italian commentator was mentioning that several times during this descent, Moser tried to get away from Hinault, but to absolutely no avail. Here we see Greg doing some attempt at descending in a rather non-conventional way.
And here we have the other riders pretty much unconcerned with Greg LeMond's aerodynamic coasting style that has now been abandoned by Greg himself.
That's Cerrone, by the way.
Ed eccoci con Ceruti, poi Greg
turn his hat around backwards and get the brim down over his neck, so there's more aerodynamic there. He's apparently unconcerned with that as well. Here's Moser now with what is pretty much a trademark for him. We see him with his hat turned backwards like this quite often. And Cerrone, on the other hand, prefers to wear it forward with the brim up.
By the way, Moser is acknowledged to be one of the best descenders in Italy, and he has actually gotten away on many crucial occasions right at a descent.
Of course, when he raced with Eddie Merckx, that was not he was not going to make up any ground on a descent to Merckx. Merckx, who was considered as one of the best descenders in the world and of all time, was fearless on the downhills. And because he was also quite heavy, was able to use his inertia to go much faster on straighter portions of downhill runs. And some of the lighter riders, he was able to make up a lot of ground going downhill that he perhaps would lose going uphill. There's the green jersey of the sprint leader, De Silva, in the middle of the peloton. They wind into the finish. Hinault and LeMond classically having a little chit-chat, discussing some strategy perhaps at this point in the race.
And immediately afterwards, you're going to see Moser and one of his teammates doing likewise. So it seems like tit for tat, so to speak.
Game plan on the fly. They all speak each other's language, so they have to do it pretty cleverly, I would say, or use a dialect that they would hope the others wouldn't understand if they could in fact hear. Here's the final kilometer now to the finish. Whatever they've discussed will now be executed, hopefully.
At that point, right after Moser talking to his teammate, it looks like he attempted to take a flyer. I don't know if that was part of the conversation or what. Did we already cross the last kilometer banner?
Yes, we're in the final kilometer, and one rider just meters off the front, as you can see. The field, no one rider.
It looks like it's slightly uphill, you know.
Now the field is beginning to get a bit more animated, and this one rider's lead is going to evaporate. Hinault now makes his presence on the right side of the road. We see the purple jersey Van de Velde in the middle, and now the sprint has begun in earnest.
I see Moser there on the right, and
he's making a good gallop here.
It's Moser making a good gallop.
It looks like he's made it good enough to win. With Van de Velde behind, it is going to be Francesco Moser who's going to win this stage. 6.5 hours.
Here we see it in slow motion, yeah.
There's that acceleration that we have spoken of so many times, that acceleration to the finish. You see Moser number 1, you see the purple jersey of Van de Velde behind him, and fourth there is the white jersey of the first-year pro leader.
Volpe is his name, yeah.
Volpe. Yellow Del Tongo, could that be Cerrone?
Yeah, that was Cerrone on the outside, correct.
So when it comes down to a finish, the big names will go to the front.
It's no accident that they're there either, huh?
Here's Moser now, getting his opportunity to douse the crowd. There's Van de Velde in the purple climber's jersey, the leader in the climbing competition.
Now we're looking at the 20th stage, and this is the second stage that was very, very significant for U.S. cycling. This is a stage that was won by Andy Hempstead, and you're going to see exactly the point where he makes his move. It was a short stage. It was 58 kilometers long, and approximately half of the stage was, no, not half, but up to kilometer number 33, it was all flat. And from kilometer 33 to kilometer 58, which we're talking about 25 kilometers, it was climbing.
They're definitely climbing at this point. And the pink jersey of Hinault is at the front of the field. There he is.
Un Hinault in difesa, un Hinault che ha mandato per interposta persona
Bernard Hinault, who at this point had won 4 Tours de France and is the race leader in the Giro d'Italia.
There we have Tommy Prim and Marino Lajarreta.
Climbers come to the front now. And there's Hampsten.
And there's Hampsten's move, yeah.
Andy Hampsten, who rides here in the United States.
Now this was planned, by the way, Brian. I don't know if you've read some of the commentary on this, but this was planned between him and Mike Neal. They decided that at a certain point, and there was a sign on the road or something, he was going to take a shot at it. And that's exactly what he did. At that point where there was a sign on the road, a specific sign that they had prearranged, he took off and he made it stick, no question about it. Here's Greg chasing after. And as you can see, the road is pretty steep at this point. Huh?
Greg LeMond making a real hard effort out of the saddle now. He and Andy Hampsten know each other quite well, have trained together quite a bit, raced against each other in America when they were both younger and now in Europe. So here LeMond says, even if the rest of you guys don't know about this Hampsten fellow, I certainly do, and he can and will ride away from us if we let him. And that is exactly what is going on. LeMond is now fading back.
He was joined by Lajarreta.
And there's the rest of the field, led by Volpi.
No, this is Giuliani, Brian. Remember that I mentioned to you Moser's Domestique Giuliani that saved the day. He's the one that basically paced the whole group and minimized the losses of the peloton in this stage.
There he is. It looked like the white jersey of Volpi, but now there's LeMond, a very good, clear picture of Greg LeMond, the great American professional. And
here is Giuliani
switching quickly to Giuliani. And Lajarreta, who...
Lajarreta must have attacked 6-7 times on this climb. It was just one attack after the other. He finally did come in second place, and he deserved it thoroughly because he was notwithstanding Andy, he was definitely the most aggressive rider at the stage.
Predetermined attack point or not, it worked out perfectly for Hampsten, at least up to this point in time, because he literally caught everybody with their pants down. And just as the field hesitated, Hampsten attacked very strongly and has gained a very large gap on the field. And now in the final kilometer, the final few meters, a very, very happy Andy Hampsten.
Now we must mention too is that Andy was not a danger man, so consequently Hinault and Moser and Greg would not go to the very depth of their energy to chase him down because he was not really a danger man, and it would have been I would imagine it would have been a different situation altogether if he would have been one of the ones in the top general classification.
Nevertheless, he has made a very fine move that has earned himself a stage victory in the Giro d'Italia, a place in history as being now one of 2 Americans to this point to win stages in the Giro of 1985.
Well, later on, I don't know if any Americans are aware of this, but he went to an invitational Cronoscalata, which is a time trial hill climb, which is invitational to all of the Italian pros. So the specific number of them get invited to this. And he was invited by virtue of having won this stage race. And he went ahead and won this invitational hill climb time trial.
There he is.
Consecrated him as definitely a world-class climber.
And he has followed that with his performance in the American Tour, the American National Tour, the Course Classic, with the only real competition that Greg LeMond had in that in that event. Andy Hampsten, with virtually no team support, at least not on general classification, was able to be the aggressor in the climbing part, and his climbing style is very, very obviously that of a world-class climber.
Well, he even after that went on to Colombia, which is the country that traditionally has the best climbers, and won a climbing stage race over there.
He's very confident of his abilities, and that confidence, I think, is just added to what he already has physically.
Okay, here we're on stage 21, and it's 229 kilometers. And we're looking at the last of the flat stages, which is the last chance for the sprinters.
They appear to be taking every opportunity, or taking the opportunity in hand right now. One solo rider, and apparently there's one of the red, white, and green 7-11 jerseys in second position in the field there, and another one 3 riders back from that. It's Hayden perhaps at the front.
Yeah, it's Hayden at the front, right.
And perhaps Finney, the 5th rider in the line there.
A rompere I cambi, a fare il gioco di squadra questi americani.
Riders are beginning late in the Giro d'Italia to exhibit the abilities that we have seen, we feel as though they have, and they are getting used to this kind of racing now, and are showing their abilities.
You can see that we're getting close to the finish line by the size of the crowd.
The question is, will this rider be able to hold off the charging field, or will he be swallowed up as we've seen so many before? Now the sprint really begins. We see.
By the way, Brian, that rider was Hayden, the one that was away at the front. And then there were other Americans that were doing some team tactics there.
There's Hayden, having just been caught. This apparently goes uphill here at the finish.
Yeah, it's a slight grade at the finish from what I can see in the map here.
We do see more and more of the red, white, and green jerseys beginning to be at the front of the peloton when these pictures of the sprints are shown. The Del Tongo now has one man clearly off the front. And there you see a number of those red, white, and green American 7-11 jerseys. So their strength is coming here late in the race.
So now we're within the last half kilometer. And we got the sprinters getting ready for this.
Big acceleration. This riders will begin a sprint at better than 30 miles an hour and go faster from that point. And there's somebody really rocketing out of the field, and it looks, again, like that blue jersey of
That
Freuler.
guy looks like he got shot out of a cannon. Freuler.
Sure. Very, very happy. Has taken the final opportunity for a field sprint victory and turned it into just that. Urs Freuler, the Swiss rider on the Italia team, and he is just simply a magnificent field sprinter, a tremendous turn of speed, 2 world championship titles in 1985, one in the Kieran and the other in the points of race, and third we see one of the red, white, and green jerseys.
That was Finney, by the way.
Of 7-11, and Davis Finney putting himself in a familiar place, and that is at the front of a field sprint. But instead of in America in a 50-mile criterium, it's in the Giro d'Italia in a 120-mile road race.
Now we're looking at the 22nd stage, 48 kilometers.
No, we're looking at a boat.
No, we're coming on to the 48 stage. By the way, that's the Amerigo Vespucci, which is it's a ship by the Italian Navy. I believe in the United States we have one of these training ships for the Naval Academy. That's the Italian answer to that. This is a 48-kilometer time trial, and it's got a tiny bit of a hill in exactly the middle of it, and then it's somewhat of a descent all the way to the finish line from that point on. There was an outside chance at this point that Moser, with an excellent time trial, would be able to take the pink jersey from Hinault. This being the last stage, it was the last opportunity that he had. However, it would have taken more than, I think it was about 1 minute and 15 seconds separating these 2 riders. And it's difficult to take a minute and 15 seconds off Hinault, if not impossible.
Here's Bernard Hinault, the race leader, who will start last again. Reverse general classification. And you can see that Bernard Hinault is not taking this lightly. He knows that he has abilities that are better than anyone else's, except perhaps Moser. So the race of truth comes down to a race between two of the best time trialists in the world.
Now, you remember that last year, Laurent Fignon came into this stage wearing the pink jersey, only to lose it to Moser in the very, very last stage time trial. So Moser was kind of hopeful that he could do this situation again. However, it's not going to come to pass.
Bernard Hinault, equal to the task of defending that pink jersey on the final day, and showing that great form that he has and the ability to pace himself over a distance, and his time trialing ability has constantly stood him in good stead in international races. And Moser is fighting a losing battle at this point in the Giro d'Italia to defend his overall title and to overtake or retake the pink jersey from Hinault in the final stage.
Now, they just announced Moser's half-point time, which was 32:14. So that's 32 minutes and 14 seconds for 24 kilometers.
Il miglior tempo finale con un'ora, 2 primi, 28 secondi alla media di 46 e 104.
It's a little faster than I think either of us could go, Jose.
Maybe even in a car, Brian.
Downhill with a tailwind and big rocks in both pockets. Here's Hinault going faster yet.
Okay, they're going to announce the halfway point time for Hinault. Exactly the same time, 32:14, exactly to the second, the same time.
So the time that Moser needs to make up is going to have to be in the second half of a race, and the chances of doing that are exactly half. If Hinault is able to match the speed of Moser, then he will hold the jersey, and this is in fact what appears to Moser, as you can see, has posted the fastest time of the time trial, and there it is, the first place time at that point.
59:57, which gives him an average speed of in excess of 48 kilometers an hour, which is 30 miles an hour.
But here's Hinault now with Moser's time on the top of 59:57, and Hinault's time at running at 59:32. And if he's faster than Moser, obviously he defends the jersey. Even if he's slower, but by less than a minute and 15 seconds or whatever, then he will hold it.
So he's already won.
And Moser there is looking and watching, and essentially Hinault has won.
He's 300 meters from the finish at this point. So.
He has won the 1985 Giro d'Italia. Bernard Hinault will come to the finish line.
This is his third Tour of Italy.
There's his time, as you can see, 7 seconds slower than Moser, but better than a minute in overall time faster for the entire race.
So with these images, we're leaving you with this recap of the 68th Giro d'Italia, and we hope that next year you'll be interested in watching this famous stage race, second only to the Tour de France.